Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Moving Markets Podcast. My name is Jeffrey Dunyan. I am the CEO and founder of Safe Option Strategies and your host of this program. It is Monday, July the 7th, 2025. Stock market has been closed for about 30 minutes today. And it was kind of a sad roller coaster ride today. Maybe roller coaster is not the right term. It was kind of a sad day in the sense that the markets got a little momentum to the downside and then just continued moving down. And I don't know that there was started out to the downside and then unfortunately just kind of caught momentum and kept going down. This is up off the low of the session a little bit. Same with the NASDAQ. Dow finished down 422. S&P finished down 49. NASDAQ finished down 188. Those are all off of the session lows. If we look at our one-day chart, the lowest point of the day was right around 2:30 Eastern time. And then we managed to come back a little bit from that. I think at one point in time, I saw the Dow Jones Industrial Average down 577. I might not be exactly accurate on that, but I think I saw that at one point in time during the day. So, a modest little rally back to the upside to finish off of those lows. And from my perspective, there were two primary things. Well, I'm going to add a third thing. Two primary things that sent the markets down today, and then one other thing that might have exacerbated it just a little bit, or thrown a little bit of fuel onto the fire. The number one thing that I think caused the markets to sell off today, believe it or not, I don't think it was the report that bigger tariffs are going to go into place on August 1st, specifically with Japan, and I can't remember who else was mentioned. There's a total of 7 countries. I think Japan was the one that people were probably the most focused on. I do think that was probably the second most, or the second biggest contributor to what caused the markets to go down today. But I think the biggest contributor for today's move down was actually kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy based on this entire premise of buy the rumor, sell the news. So, I took most of last week off. I had projects at home. I had family in town for the 4th of July holiday weekend. Had a lot going on. So I did a podcast on Monday and then didn't do it the rest of the week. And there was some big stuff that happened during the week. May not have been the best week in the world to take some time off. But, the biggest news, I think, of the week was the big, beautiful bill that got signed into law on July 4th. Came right down to the wire, passed the Senate with J.D. Vance casting the deciding vote because of a couple of Republican senators that defected. And then you had the House barely got it passed through. Took them, some wrangling, a lot of backdoor negotiations and behind the scenes negotiations. And it made it through. And Trump signed it into law on Friday. Well, if you think back a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, a lot of analysts were saying that we're due for a little bit of a correction if this bill gets signed. The markets have kind of gone up a little too far, a little too fast in the previous week and a half. And it doesn't happen very often, but the S&P 500 actually moved into overbought territory. That is kind of a rare thing. It's not as uncommon for the NASDAQ to move into overbought territory. I would say it's not even quite as uncommon for the Dow to move into overbought territory, but the S&P 500 rarely moves into overbought territory. And this strong run-up we had in anticipation of this bill getting through and getting signed kind of had some hangover effect to it. And I think the reason I say self-fulfilling prophecy, I have often thought this about this notion of buy the rumor, sell the news. I think it's something that people are programmed to do. I don't think there's a lot of logic behind it. I don't think there's a lot of mechanics or fundamentals or sound technicals that justify the whole notion of buy the rumor, sell the news. But it gets repeated so often that people become subconsciously programmed to actually do it. So, of course, when you've got hundreds of analysts putting in print and they're on CNBC and they're on Fox Business News and they're all over the internet and they're saying over and over again, buy the rumor, sell the news. Well, when the news actually happens, there's your little bit of a sell. I think we could have a little bit more sell-off this week, but I don't think we're necessarily going to have a negative week. If we look at where, actually, let me take that back. I think we might have a flat to slightly negative week, but I don't think we're going to have so a flat to slightly bearish week. But I don't think it gets a lot worse than today. I actually think from today, we're up the rest of the week. Maybe we get back to where we were at the end of the day on Friday, maybe not. But I think we're actually, from this point on, not without a couple of bumps in the road, but from this point on, I think we're up on the week. Because I don't think we're going to get like a correction on the S&P back to 60-50. But I think we'll have maybe a little bit of wobble, maybe another day of sell-off, and then I think we'll have a big finish to the end of the week. I think the whole sell the news part of this is going to be over quickly. I think more and more you're going to start hearing about trade deals getting done. Remember, I think the number one thing that caused the sell-off today was the buy the rumor, sell the news thing. The number two thing to cause the sell-off today was the announcement about tariffs being imposed on August 1st and extra tariffs on some countries and new tariffs on other countries and higher tariffs on other countries. But there is just such ample history now that all of Trump's tariff talks result in better trade deals. And as you hear news, maybe in the form of rumors, maybe it's by the rumor again, but as you hear rumor or news that there are trade deals done, or even if you just hear news this week that companies have come back to the table to negotiate in earnest, you're going to see this market rally. Let me go back now and talk a little bit about the bill. I'm just going to give you my thoughts on the bill that got signed. There are some people that I think very highly of, and there are some people that I, even if I don't think real highly of them, I absolutely respect their opinion. And in some cases, I even trust their opinion on certain things that have been major naysayers about this bill. They are coming down very hard on this bill. I generally like Rand Paul. He's been one of the biggest critics of this bill. I generally like Ron Johnson. He's been a huge critic of this bill, even though he actually turned around and signed it after saying he wasn't going to. Some people that are huge proponents of this bill are not people that I'm real big fans of or pay attention to real closely. But here's what I personally have become convinced of as I've watched this thing go through the process of being negotiated, being put together, all of the negatives coming out about it, all of the positives coming out about it. Here's what I have come to believe, and I may end up sounding like a little bit of a Donald Trump groupie, or maybe I'll be accused of drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit, but this is honestly the way I feel. I think the bill had to get through, regardless of the things we don't like that are in it and the things we wish that were in it that are not. I think the bill had to get through for the sake of the Trump presidency, and especially for the sake of inflation and taxes. Without this bill getting through, the Republican Party and Donald Trump would have lost the ability to win the war on taxes. The Trump tax cuts that went into place in 2017 benefited the entire country. Even some liberals are willing to admit to that. In a moment of honesty, even some of them are willing to admit that it helped raise all income classes and all social classes, that those tax cuts were good for everybody. If the Republican Party had allowed those tax cuts to end, and I don't know, the jargon about it would be a huge tax increase. Well, some people don't want to call it an increase. They just want to say we're doing away with tax cuts that should have never taken place. Well, whatever terminology you want to use, if those tax cuts reverted back to pre-2017 taxes, it would be devastating to this economy. And just like the 2017 tax cuts helped all income classes, having them disappear at the end of the year would do damage to all income classes. I am convinced of that. If you stripped everything else away for that reason alone, I think this bill had to get through. Now, the second reason I think it had to get through was because of the money for border control and deportations and the money for our military. And if we don't invest in those two things, we're in trouble as a country. I don't want to get into the social side of the border and deporting people that are here illegally, but just look at the economic side of it. It is not sustainable economically to keep giving goodies to people that are not supposed to be here. And in some cases, that comes directly at the expense of citizens of this country. So as compassionate as you want to be, as much as you want to look out for other people and care for your neighbor and your fellow human beings, it's simply not sustainable to do it for people that are not supposed to be here legally, that are coming in the tens of millions just to get those benefits. So say what you will about the social side of it. I've got feelings about, how compassionate should we be as a country? Should we turn away a struggling family from El Salvador that wants a better life here, even if they're not being politically persecuted and it's purely a financial thing? I struggle with that. I'm not going to tell you that I'm completely against helping a family like that, but I'm not going to tell you that I'm in favor of doing it without better processes in place and better restrictions. And for a period of time, maybe not doing it at all until we take care of some of the masses of people that came in illegally in the last 4 years. But all of that aside, on the social side of things and on the human compassion side of things, from an economic standpoint, you cannot have social welfare programs and an open border at the same time. In fact, it's a disaster. So I believe the bill had to get done for the tax cuts or keeping the tax cuts in place, and for the economic impact of so many people coming here illegally and leeching off of the benefits that should be for American citizens. And if you're not spending billions and tens of billions and hundreds of billions and trillions of dollars on people that are not supposed to be in the country, then you have money to address other things. Now, here's the other reason I'm optimistic about this, and I'm not paying attention, even some people that I very much respect, I'm not paying attention to the naysayers of this bill. I'm taking the president at his word that now that this bill is in place and has been passed as a law, now Congress can turn their attention to shrinking the size of government, finding other programs to cut, finding other ways to cut spending, finding other ways to stimulate growth. There's a lot of things that I wish had been in that bill that were not. I'm putting a little bit of trust right now in the president and the Republican Congress's ability to get some of those things in place. Okay, that's my 2 cents on this bill. Is I'm until I see otherwise. And it's hard for me to put any amount of trust at all in Congress. But I'm going to try and trust that now that this bill is done, attention can be given to some of these other things that we wish had been in the bill or wish had not been in the bill. So that's my 2 cents on it. Now, I want to shift gears. I want to talk about the new trade that I sent out just a little while ago, and I want to talk about what's going on the rest of this week. So let's first talk about, I hope people are going to think that I have just absolutely fallen over myself over this company, Coreweave. There are a lot of things I like about this company. So not only did we send out a new spread trade for Coreweave today, and we're doing a leap. It's a simple trade. It's a leap bull call calendar. We're going way out to June of next year. We're buying 160 strike long calls. We're going to September of this year and getting 170 strike short calls. I believe we're going to have a run back up here to around 185, and that will probably cause us to roll this short call out and up at least one time, and then hopefully with some profit in these 2 legs of the trade. When we get to about a week before they report earnings, I believe they report on the I looked it up earlier and I'm forgetting now, on the 13th. I wanted to say the 13th, but I couldn't quite remember. Okay, so before we get to the earnings report on the 13th, we are going to add a bear put to the trade in case Coreweave has a miss and comes down. I think they've gone up a little too far, a little too fast, but I'm not ready. I'm not prepared to not be bullish on them because there's still a lot to like about this company and a lot to be bullish on. I do think in the coming weeks they will make another run up to this 185 mark that they hit a couple weeks ago. So with that thought in mind, I think we'll get profitable in our bull call calendar. I think we'll end up rolling short calls out and up one time, and then somewhere in the neighborhood of a week to 3 or 4 days before the earnings report, we will add probably, let's say hypothetically, if they're up here at 185, I would probably do something like a 175, 165 bear call, because I think even on an earnings miss, they probably don't come down much below what a strong level of support would be, right down here around 150. So we'll make sure that we are protected to the downside, but not spending so much money on puts that we can't still be very profitable in the trade. That's the thought behind Coreweave. Now, I also sent out today a Coreweave collar entry, but I did it a little bit unique. We went ahead and bought shares at 160. And then instead of doing, sometimes I get into a collar trade with a married put strategy. Instead of doing a married put, I did a bear put spread. And again, that's because the puts were very expensive. I did not want to spend a lot of money on long puts. So I've protected us to the downside, but just like with the spread trade, I think Coreweave is going to make a run back up to 185. At that point in time, we will roll our long puts up to wherever the stock is trading. Then we will add short calls, and then we will get rid of the short puts that we have and be in a really good spot for their earnings report. My gut feel is when they report earnings in about a month and a week, my gut feel is they're going to come down. I think there's people that got in to Coreweave here and here. You can see the big volume days there. And I think those people have made a lot of profit. And I think Coreweave may have a hard time living up to the hype, but that does not sour me on them as a long-term trade and as a long-term company to own. So both our new spread trade for the week as well as our collar trade for the week both ended up being Coreweave. Now, on the triple play side of things, we added a new trade today for Coreweave. You see a theme here? And in the money bull call, that before the day was over triggered out our target profit. And so in a single day trade, we got a 35% return on a one-day trade. I don't consider myself a day trader, but when I'm handed a gift like that, I absolutely unequivocally take it. In addition to the Coreweave trade, in anticipation for their my screen keeps, I'm so sorry, folks. My screen keeps going out, becoming really annoying. And it is a GoToWebinar issue. And for that, I apologize. In addition to the Coreweave trade. We opened a new trade on the triple play side of things. Why am I not? I'm just, my mind is blanking. We did one on Crowdstrike as well. And unfortunately, my Crowdstrike trade did not fill. I'm going to try again tomorrow morning. So watch Discord for that. And then we also did a long iron condor on Taiwan Semiconductors. Now, the Taiwan Semiconductor one, a little bit different. We went out to the end of next week, and that is just one day after their earnings report. So my hope is that during this week, because they went into overbought territory, my hope is that during this week, they come down far enough that we, maybe come down and test support right down here around 215, 216. If that happens, we'll take some profit and get out this week before we get into next week's earnings report. Or we get a run up in the week ahead of earnings and we see an opportunity to get out before the actual report comes. I don't want to be sitting in the trade the day of the earnings report and have the stock price trading halfway in between our long put and long call strikes. Or excuse me, let me back that up. I said that wrong. If we got to the day before earnings and we were halfway in between here, I'd probably leave the trade open because I would be confident that there would be a big enough move up or a big enough move down that we could get profitable in the trade. Kind of light on the economic calendar this week. There are some reports. There's a consumer credit report coming out tomorrow. Thursday, the jobless claims. I don't know that I've ever before really paid attention to the Treasury statement. So I don't know that that's has the ability to be a real market mover. I absolutely believe what is going to move the markets this week in a significant way is the announcement of trade deals getting done or trade deals falling apart. If you get neither of those things happen this week, I think we finish kind of flat from where we're at right now today. If you get an announcement or two about people coming to the table to negotiate, trade deals getting done, you're going to see this rally continue. If you don't get that, or you get the opposite of it, you get news that bigger tariffs, more tariffs, and countries are pushing back in a way that's not going to help them ultimately, then we get a sell-off this week. But we'll see what happens. All right, I'm going to wrap up right there. I'm going to be back on live. I'll be on live tomorrow morning, 30 minutes after the open of the market. Hope to see you there. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.